I am James Wilson. I'm 32 years old, and I refuse to invite my own parents and my golden child brother to my wedding. So they threatened to destroy my life. Before I tell you about the moment they tried to crash the ceremony and got the biggest shock of their lives, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always cool to see how far these stories travel. Alright, let's get into it. The final month before a wedding is a special kind of chaos. For most people, it's a whirlwind of cake tastings, last-minute fittings, and the delicate art of seating charts. For my fiancée, Olivia, and me, it was something else. It was the final countdown to a war I had spent my entire life trying to avoid. Our New York apartment, usually a sanctuary of calm above the city's hum, had become our strategic command center. We were sitting on the sofa, surrounded by swatches of fabric and lists of names. The city lights twinkled outside, a million tiny, indifferent stars. Olivia was humming softly to herself, a small, focused smile on her face, as she put the finishing touches on the playlist for our reception. She was trying to decide on the perfect song for our first dance. "What do you think?" she asked, turning her laptop towards me. "Etta James? At last? Or something a little more modern?" I looked at her, at the genuine, uncomplicated joy on her face, and a wave of fierce, protective love washed over me. This was my future. This simple, peaceful moment was everything I was fighting for. I wanted a lifetime of debating song choices with this incredible woman. "Etta James is perfect," I said, my voice softer than I intended. Her smile widened. "I thought so too." She went back to her playlist, and I went back to staring at the guest list on the coffee table. It was a lie that I was just double-checking it. I was staring at the names that weren't there, the 3 names that had defined my life through their presence and would now define my future through their absence. Robert Wilson, Linda Wilson, Tyler Wilson, my father, my mother, and my younger brother. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone began to vibrate on the table. The screen lit up with a photo of my mom from years ago, smiling brightly at a family barbecue. My stomach immediately tightened into a familiar, cold knot. It was a Pavlovian response I'd had since childhood. Olivia's happy humming stopped. She reached out and put her hand on my knee, her touch grounding me. "You don't have to answer that, you know?" "I know," I said, my voice tight, "but delaying it just makes it worse. It's better to get it over with." I took a deep breath, the kind you take before diving into icy water, and swiped to answer, putting the phone on speaker. "Hello." "James, honey, I was just thinking about you." My mother's voice chirped through the speaker. It was a voice I knew all too well, sickeningly sweet, dripping with false affection. It was the voice she used right before she was about to ask for something, to demand something, to manipulate a situation to her liking. "Hi, Mom. Your father and I were just looking at the calendar, and we realized it's getting so close. Gosh, it seems like just yesterday you were a little boy, and now you're getting married. We're just so excited for our firstborn's big day." I closed my eyes, a sense of weary resignation washing over me. This was it, the direct assault. "Mom," I began, my voice as steady and neutral as I could make it. "About the wedding." "Oh, I know. Is there anything we can do to help? Your father was thinking he could help out with the bar tab, as a wedding gift from us. We want everything to be perfect for you." The offer was bait, a way to buy their entry. "That won't be necessary," I said, cutting through the pretense. "And there won't be any invitations sent to your address." Silence. For a full 5 seconds, the only sound was the faint hiss of the speakerphone. The air in our apartment grew thick and heavy. Then, the sweetness in her voice vanished, instantly replaced by an icy fury that was far more familiar to me. "What did you just say?" "You, Dad, and Tyler," I repeated, each word a heavy stone. "You are not invited to the wedding." The explosion was instantaneous. I didn't even need to hear her response. I could hear my father roaring in the background, his voice a muffled cannon shot. "Give me the phone, Linda." The phone fumbled, and then his voice, no longer muffled, blasted from the speaker. "You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you? Who the hell do you think you are?" I pulled the phone away from my ear, his yelling still audible from a foot away. Olivia squeezed my knee, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and concern. I ended the call. Just like that. The sudden silence in the room was more deafening than the shouting had been. "Well," I said, my voice hoarse. I looked at Olivia, the woman who had shown me what unconditional love and support actually looked like. "The storm is here." To understand why a man would do something as seemingly cold as banning his own family from his wedding, you have to understand that this wasn't a snap decision. It was the final brick in a wall I had been forced to build, piece by painful piece, since I was a child. I didn't even realize how tall that wall had become until I was sitting in a therapist's office a few weeks before the wedding, trying to explain the lifetime of reasons behind that one phone call. Olivia had suggested it. After my father's roaring threats, she saw the guilt and anxiety warring inside me. She saw me wrestling with the ghost of a loyalty I didn't know. "You're not wrong for protecting yourself, James," she'd said, her hand cupping my cheek. "But you shouldn't have to carry the weight of their reaction alone." Her colleague, Sophia, who had dealt with her own family trauma, had given her the name of a therapist, Dr. Winters. I was skeptical. In my family, you didn't air your dirty laundry. You buried it. Therapy was for the weak, a sign you couldn't handle your own problems. But looking at the genuine worry on Olivia's face, I knew I had to try. I was building a new life with her, and I refused to let the rot from my old one seep in. Dr. Winters's office was calm and quiet, a stark contrast to the noise in my head. She was an older woman with kind eyes that seemed to see right through the carefully constructed defenses I'd worn for years. "So," she began gently after I'd given her the short version of the wedding drama, "you've set a boundary, a perfectly healthy one, yet you're feeling a profound sense of guilt, as if you're the one in the wrong. Why do you think that is?" The question was a key, unlocking a door I had kept bolted shut for 2 decades. And the memories didn't just flood out. They erupted. It started the day my brother, Tyler, was born. I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant, like it belonged to someone else. I was 3. Before him, I was the center of their universe. I have these faint, sun-drenched memories of my dad teaching me how to cast a fishing line at a lake, of my mom hanging my crayon drawings of our family on the refrigerator, right at her eye level, telling me I was her little Picasso. I was their boy. Then Tyler arrived. He was a difficult baby, always crying. Later, he was diagnosed with asthma. He was fragile. He needed more attention, more care, more money. At least that's how my parents explained it. But that need became a permanent state of being. He wasn't just the fragile child. He became the golden one. And I became scenery. A fixture in the house like a chair or a lamp, useful but unnoticed. "Tell me about a specific time you felt that shift," Dr. Winters prompted, her pen poised over her notepad. "A moment that stands out." My mind instantly flew back to my 10th birthday. The memory was so vivid it was almost tangible. For months, I had been obsessed with getting a mountain bike. A silver Huffy with 21 speeds and front shock absorbers. I'd read bike magazines, compared models. I'd left catalogs open on the kitchen counter, with the Huffy I wanted circled in red marker. I talked about it to anyone who would listen. At school, I told my friends, "Just wait. After my birthday, we'll be able to hit the trails in the woods." The morning of my birthday, I practically levitated down the stairs, my heart pounding with a pure, childish anticipation. There, by the fireplace, was a pile of neatly wrapped presents. I tore into them, my excitement mounting. A pair of stiff, dark-wash jeans, a 3-pack of plain t-shirts, a few paperback books for school, a multi-pack of socks. That was it. My heart didn't just sink. It plummeted. "We're on a tight budget this year, champ," my dad said, ruffling my hair in that dismissive way he had, his eyes already on the sports section of the newspaper. "You know how it is. Happy birthday." I tried to be grateful. I really did. I mumbled my thanks and went upstairs to try on the new clothes, the smell of department store dye filling my nostrils. The next day at school, when my friends asked about the bike, I lied and said my parents were getting it for me later. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. 2 weeks later, on a random Saturday, I walked into the garage. And there they were, my parents and a beaming Tyler, standing next to a brand new, top-of-the-line bicycle. It wasn't a Huffy. It was a Schwinn, deep metallic blue with better shocks and more gears. It was far more expensive than the one I had wanted. "What's this for?" I asked, the words catching in my throat. The betrayal was so sharp, so sudden, it felt like a physical blow. My father turned to me, his expression a mixture of annoyance and impatience, as if my presence was spoiling this special moment. "His asthma," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "The doctor said he needs more exercise to strengthen his lungs. You're already athletic enough." Tyler, who was 7, hopped on the bike and rode it around in proud, wobbly circles on the driveway. A king surveying his new kingdom. I just stood there in the shadows of the garage, invisible. That was the day, I told Dr. Winters, my voice thick with the memory of that long-ago humiliation, that I learned a fundamental rule of my family. My wants were frivolous, but his wants were needs. Dr. Winters wrote something down. "So, in your family's economy of emotion, your desires were worthless, while his were priceless. Go on." The pattern became ingrained in the fabric of our lives. In middle school, I was a classic overachiever, a straight-A student. I made the honor roll every single semester. My report cards, filled with glowing comments from teachers, would get a cursory, "That's nice, James," before being tossed on the mail pile on the counter. But when Tyler, who struggled with every subject, managed to get a B+ on a single math test after weeks of FS and DS, my parents declared it a miracle. That weekend, they took the entire family, including my grandparents, to an expensive steakhouse to celebrate. My father stood up and gave a toast about Tyler's incredible turnaround and unlimited potential. I sat there, cutting my steak into unnecessarily small pieces, a ghost at their feast of praise. In high school, it escalated. My English teacher, a wonderful woman named Mrs. Reynolds, saw something in my writing. She pushed me to enter a statewide essay competition. When I won first place, I was ecstatic. It came with a small scholarship and a ceremony in the state capitol. The award ceremony was on a Saturday, but my parents couldn't make it. "We'd love to, honey, but we have to be at Tyler's soccer game," my mom said, not a hint of apology in her voice. "It's the playoffs. We can't miss it." Tyler spent 50 of the 60 minutes of that game on the bench. Mrs. Reynolds ended up driving me the 2 hours to the ceremony herself. She sat in the audience and cheered louder than anyone when my name was called. She bought me ice cream on the way home and said something I've never forgotten. "James," she said, looking me straight in the eye, "some people are so busy looking for glitter that they can't see gold even when it's shining right in front of them. Don't you ever let them make you think you're not valuable." At 16, desperate for a sliver of independence, I got a part-time job at a Barnes & Noble. I loved it. The smell of books and coffee, the quiet hum of people browse. My manager, Mr. Gonzalez, was a good guy who recognized my work ethic and promoted me to shift supervisor within 6 months. For the first time, I had my own money. I opened a savings account, earmarking it for college. The freedom lasted 3 months. Tyler, then 13, started complaining that it was unfair that I had money for movies and CDs while he had none. Instead of using it as a teaching moment about work and responsibility, my parents came to me with a shocking ultimatum. "You need to share with your brother," my father declared one evening at dinner. I remember he didn't even look up from his plate. "I do share," I said. "I bought him that video game he wanted last week." "That's not what I mean," my father said. "From now on, you give him half of every paycheck." I dropped my fork, clattered against the plate. "What? That's my money." I work 30 hours a week for that money. He's your brother? My mother chimed in, her voice taking on a wounded tone, as if I were the one being unreasonable. Families are supposed to help each other. You have more than enough. Either you share or you quit the job, my father said, his voice flat and final. Your choice. My best friend Marcus was outraged when I told him. We were in his basement listening to music. That's not sharing, man. That's theft, he said, his face screwed up in disbelief. They're literally teaching him to be an entitled leech. You should tell them to go to hell. But I couldn't. I was 16. I needed the job for my college applications, and I was terrified of their anger. So I complied. Every 2 weeks, I would cash my paycheck and hand over half of it to Tyler, who would snatch it from my hand without a word of thanks. I watched my hard-earned money get spent on junk food, movie tickets for his friends, and ridiculously expensive sneakers. My college fund stagnated, and a cold, hard resentment began to build in my gut. Then there was the car. After 2 years of working double shifts and saving every penny I didn't have to give to Tyler, I bought a 10-year-old Honda Civic. It was my pride and joy. It was my freedom on 4 wheels. I washed it every weekend. I learned how to change the oil myself. One Saturday night, I had a date. I went to the garage, and the car was gone. Tyler had taken the keys from the hook in the kitchen, picked up some girl he was trying to impress, and gone for a joyride. He brought it back after midnight with a huge, ugly dent in the passenger side fender and the gas tank on empty. I was shaking with a white-hot rage. I stormed into the house and confronted my parents, who were watching TV. My father wouldn't even look at me. My mother just sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. "Oh, James, for heaven's sake, don't be so dramatic," she said, her eyes still glued to the screen. "He's just a teenager trying to figure things out. You need to be more understanding. It's just a little dent." Understanding? He had stolen and damaged my property, the one major thing I had ever owned for myself, and I was supposed to be understanding. The repair cost me $300, almost 2 full paychecks. I never left the keys in the kitchen again. "It sounds," Dr. Winters said, her voice cutting through my haze of memory, "like you were not just the invisible child. You were the designated adult, the responsible one. And in that family system, the responsible one is expected to generate all the resources and carry all the burdens, while receiving none of the rewards." Her words were a gut punch of clarity. That's exactly what it was. I wasn't a son. I was a utility. The final straw, the one that severed the last thread of hope I had for their validation, came when I got into Cornell University. My high school guidance counselor had helped me apply for scholarships, and I'd gotten a substantial one. I ran home from the mailbox, clutching the thick acceptance letter, my heart threatening to beat out of my chest. This was it. Ivy League. This was the achievement they couldn't possibly ignore or downplay. I handed the letter to my parents in the kitchen. My dad glanced at it. "Cornell. Ah, good for you," he said, before turning back to the TV in the other room. "Linda, the game's about to start." My mother offered a tepid, "That's wonderful, honey," and then immediately started talking about Tyler's upcoming basketball tryouts. That night, the weight of 2 decades of dismissal finally crushed me. I went to my room, closed the door, and for the first time since I was a little boy, I cried. Not loud, angry sobs, but silent, hopeless tears. Then I picked up the phone and called the one person in my family who had always seen me. My mom's sister, my Aunt Catherine. Without a moment's hesitation, she said, "I'm on my way." She lived 2 hours away. She drove all the way to our house, picked me up, and took me out for a celebratory steak dinner, just the 2 of us. "They're fools, James," she said, her hand covering mine on the table. "Blind fools. They have a diamond and they're treating it like a rock. But you know what you are. Never forget that." 3 years later, when Tyler barely scraped into the local community college after failing to complete applications to 4 other schools, my parents threw him a massive party. They rented a hall. They hired a caterer. They invited 50 people. My father gave a tearful speech about Tyler's perseverance. I stood at the back of the room, home from Cornell for the weekend, and watched the spectacle. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt nothing. It was like watching a play about a family I had never truly belonged to. As I finished telling all this to Dr. Winters, I felt a strange sense of release, as if a great pressure had been lifted from my chest. That's why, I said, my voice clearer now, stronger. That's why they can't be at my wedding. The wedding it's the finish line. It's the life I built for myself, despite them. Their presence would feel like a betrayal of the boy who cried in his room over a Cornell acceptance letter. I can't do that to him. Dr. Winters nodded slowly. It seems to me, James, she said, that the guilt you're feeling isn't because you're doing something wrong. It's the echo of a lifetime of being told that your needs are secondary. This wedding is the first time you're unequivocally putting your own emotional well-being first, and the echo is fighting back. I left her office that day feeling lighter than I had in years. The wall I had built wasn't a prison. It was a fortress, and I was finally ready to defend it. The decision to finally and completely detach myself wasn't a single event, but the memory that encapsulates the final break, the point of no return, happened during my sophomore year at Cornell. It's the story I told Dr. Winters that made even her professional composure crack for a moment. I call it the camera incident. At Cornell, I discovered photography. Away from my family, I was starting to figure out who I was. Hiding behind a lens, I found a way to observe the world without having to participate in its messy emotions. I found peace in capturing the architectural details of the old campus buildings, the way light filtered through the autumn leaves over Cayuga Lake. My photography professor, Dr. Abernathy, was a gruff, brilliant man who didn't mince words. He saw my work from an assignment and pulled me aside after class. "Wilson," he'd said, holding up one of my prints, "you have a real eye, a natural talent for composition, for light. But your equipment is garbage. It's holding you back. If you're serious about this, you need to invest in a real camera." His words lit a fire in me. This wasn't something my parents had pushed me into. It wasn't something I was doing to get good grades. It was purely for me. It was a passion. I decided then and there that I would get a professional-grade camera. For 6 months, I worked like a dog. I kept my job in the campus library, and on weekends I started doing small gigs. I photographed local bands in dimly lit bars for $20. I took headshots for aspiring actors in the drama department. I shot a kid's birthday party. I ate ramen noodles until I was sick of the sight of them. I skipped nights out with friends, telling them I had to study when I was really just too broke to afford a beer. I researched obsessively, finally settling on a Canon body and a versatile lens that would cost around $1,200. I had a little notebook where I tracked my savings, and I watched the number creep up, dollar by painstaking dollar. It was the most disciplined I had ever been in my life. I went home for winter break with my savings tucked away, a little over $1,000 in cash, hidden in a locked drawer in my desk. I know, Dr. Winters already pointed out I should have used a bank, but this was more than money. It was a tangible symbol of my hard work, and I liked having it close. I planned to go to the camera store the day after Christmas. On Christmas Eve, I went to my desk to count the money one last time, a little ritual that filled me with pride. I put the key in the lock, but it didn't turn. It was stiff. My stomach lurched. I looked closer and saw fresh, deep scratches in the wood around the keyhole. A cold dread, icy and sharp, washed over me. I jiggled the key, and the drawer popped open. The lock had been forced, the metal bent. The small envelope where I kept my cash was there, but it felt light. My hands started to shake so badly I could barely open it. I dumped the contents onto my desk. I counted it once, twice, 3 times. $800 was gone. The air left my lungs. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I knew. Instantly, I knew. There was only one person in this house who would do this. I stormed out of my room, my heart pounding with a rage so profound it felt like it was going to split me in two. I found Tyler in the living room. The floor around him was littered with new boxes. He was gleefully unwrapping a brand new PlayStation console, a virtual reality headset, and a stack of new games. These items had not been under the Christmas tree that morning. "Where did you get that?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. He didn't even look up from the game he was examining. "Mom and Dad gave me an early Christmas present. Said I'd been doing better in my classes." My parents were in the kitchen, humming along to Christmas carols on the radio. I walked in, holding the empty, crumpled envelope. My hand was shaking. "Tyler stole my camera money," I said, my voice trembling. My mother glanced from my face to the PlayStation in the other room and then back at me, her expression not of shock, but of pure weariness. "James, don't start this now. It's Christmas Eve. Can't we have one night of peace?" "Peace," I screeched, my control finally snapping. "He stole $800 from my locked desk drawer. That's not a peace issue, that's a felony." My father turned from the sink, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His face was a thundercloud. "First of all, you watch your tone in this house," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Second, if you had put your money in a bank like a responsible adult, this wouldn't have happened. Maybe this is a good lesson for you in financial security." I stared at him, dumbfounded. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. He wasn't going to do anything. They weren't going to make Tyler return it. They weren't going to make him pay me back. They were blaming me for being stolen from. The logic was so twisted, so fundamentally broken, it made my head spin. "It's a lesson?" I repeated, my voice now barely a whisper. "A lesson." Tyler, drawn by the shouting, appeared in the doorway. He had the gall to look smug, a little smirk playing on his lips. "You weren't even using the money anyway," he shrugged. "It was just sitting there. Besides, you can probably get another scholarship or something. You're good at that." Something inside me broke. It was a clean, sharp, irreparable snap. The last, frayed thread of hope that they would ever see me, ever choose me, ever be fair was gone. It vaporized in that moment. I turned without another word, went back to my room, threw some clothes in a backpack, and called my Aunt Catherine. I was sobbing so hard I could barely get the words out, explaining what had happened. "Stay right there," she said, her voice a mixture of steel and tenderness. "I'll be there in 2 hours. Don't you go anywhere." She arrived like a force of nature. She hugged me first, a long, fierce hug that said more than words ever could. Then she marched into the living room where my parents and Tyler were watching a Christmas movie as if nothing had happened. The argument that followed was volcanic. I sat on the stairs, listening, as my aunt finally said all the things I had never been allowed to say. "Are you insane?" she yelled, her voice echoing through the normally quiet house. "Your son commits a crime. He steals from his own brother who has worked his tail off for every penny, and you reward him and blame the victim? What is wrong with you?" "Linda, this is a family matter," my father said, trying to sound authoritative. "This stopped being just a family matter when you decided to raise one son to be a functioning human and the other to be a sociopath." Catherine shot back. "You are destroying James to enable Tyler. Are you blind? Or are you just cruel?" My mother started to cry. "You don't understand, Catherine. Tyler is more sensitive. He needs more support." "He doesn't need support, Linda. He needs a conscience. And you have deliberately deprived him of one." The next morning, the house was thick with a tense, angry silence. Aunt Catherine took me to the bank and helped me open my own account, one my parents couldn't touch. Then, in the car, she pulled out her checkbook and wrote me a check for $1,000. "No, I can't take this," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "This is too much." "Yes, you can," she said firmly, pushing it into my hand. "This is not a gift. This is not charity. This is an investment. I'm investing in my brilliant nephew and his talent. You go buy the best damn camera you can find. And you show them all. I hugged her, tears streaming down my face. That was the day my real life began. After that, I made a decision. I used that money plus what I had left to buy the camera. Then I went back to Cornell and I never truly went home again. I took extra classes, worked 3 jobs. I became completely, fiercely financially independent. I spent holidays with Marcus's family or with Aunt Catherine. I called my parents on their birthdays and on Christmas. But the calls were short, superficial, stripped of all real emotion. I built a wall and I lived behind it. I graduated with honors and moved to New York. I poured everything I had into my career at a prestigious marketing firm. I was successful because I was fueled by a desperate, burning need to prove I didn't need them for anything. And then I met Olivia, and everything changed. She didn't just see the wall. She understood why it was there. She didn't try to tear it down. She just came and sat with me on my side of it. The first time she met them was a Thanksgiving dinner I had reluctantly agreed to attend a few years into our relationship. It was a masterclass in their dysfunction. Tyler spent the entire evening with exaggerated tales of his minor accomplishments at his dead-end job, while my recent promotion to a senior position at the firm went completely unmentioned. My father praised Tyler for fixing a leaky faucet, calling him a real man of the house, while I, who had just managed a $1 million ad campaign, sat in silence. Olivia watched it all, her expression neutral. Later that night, back in our apartment, she just took my hand. "Now I get it," she said softly. "I'm so sorry you had to grow up with that." Hearing her say it, having my reality validated so simply and completely, felt like a release I didn't even know I needed. So, when Olivia proposed to me a few years later, on a surprise trip to a glass cabin under the stars, saying yes was the easiest decision of my life. And when we started planning the wedding, making the decision not to invite my family was the hardest, but most necessary. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about protecting myself, and protecting the new, healthy, beautiful life I was building with Olivia. Inviting them would be like inviting the arsonists back to the house you just rebuilt from the ashes. It was never, ever going to happen. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a masterclass in psychological warfare, executed by my family with a chilling level of desperation. Their goal was simple: to shatter my resolve and force their way back into the center of my life, where they felt they belonged. Their campaign began not with a bang, but with a whisper. My mother, Linda, weaponized social media with the skill of a seasoned propagandist. She'd post old family photos, me as an awkward teenager, smiling stiffly next to a beaming Tyler, with captions that were masterpieces of passive aggression. One post, under a photo of us at a long-ago Christmas, read, "They grow up so fast. So proud of both my wonderful sons and all they've accomplished. A mother's love is forever. Can't wait to celebrate James's big day soon. #family is everything. #proudmom. #blessed." The posts were public. Friends of the family, distant relatives who only saw the curated, happy version of the Wilsons would flood the comments. "What a beautiful family, Linda. You raised such good boys." Then my phone would buzz. Texts from cousins, old neighbors, even my grandmother. "Hey, just saw your mom's post. So excited for you. My invitation must have gotten lost in the mail. Haha, let me know the details." It was a brilliant pincer movement, designed to paint me as the cruel, secretive outlier and them as the loving, bewildered parents. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, each comment and text a fresh sting of guilt. While my mother handled the public relations, Tyler took on the role of intelligence operative. He was less subtle. He started calling our vendors. Our florist, a sharp woman named Chloe, called Olivia in a state of confusion. "Hey Olivia, some guy named Tyler just called. Said he was the groom's brother and the best man's assistant. He was asking for the full delivery schedule for the boutonnieres. Seemed really fishy, so I told him nothing. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Next was the band. The band leader, a grizzled rocker named Sal, called me directly. "Hey man, Sal here. Got a weird call. Dude claiming to be your brother, trying to get our set times and arrival schedule. I told him to buzz off, that all communication goes through you or Olivia. You got some family drama brewing? We realized they were trying to piece together the entire wedding day itinerary, time, location, logistics, so they could show up and make a scene. The pressure was immense. I started sleeping badly, waking up from nightmares where they were all standing there, screaming at me as Olivia walked down the aisle. One evening, Olivia found me staring out the window, my jaw clenched. She came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Okay," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "This isn't just a family dispute anymore. This is a hostile takeover attempt of our wedding. We need a strategy." She was incredible. While I was drowning in the emotional turmoil, she was a rock of clarity. She grabbed a notebook and a pen. "All right," she said, sitting me down at the kitchen table. "Let's wargame this. Category 1, communications." She drew a line down the page. "We email every single vendor. We tell them that all communication and all changes must be approved by me or you via email, and we establish a security password for phone calls. No exceptions." Category 2, family. Her pen hovered over the paper. "This is where Aunt Catherine comes in. She's our ally on the inside. We need to tell her exactly what's happening." "And Category 3, she said, looking me straight in the eye. "Security. I know you think it's overkill, but James, look what they're doing. They are actively trying to sabotage this. Do you honestly think they're just going to give up if their little spy games don't work? We need a professional to handle this so we don't have to." She was right. The thought of them showing up and cornering me, of Olivia having to deal with them on our wedding day, was a nightmare I couldn't bear. We spent the next evening researching and hired a discreet security firm run by a man named Julian, a calm, professional ex-military man recommended by Olivia's brother. Our countermeasures sent my family into a panic. They knew they were losing control of the narrative. That's when my father called, his voice uncharacteristically calm and reasonable. It was the most dangerous voice he had. "James, this has gone on long enough. Your mother is a wreck. She's not eating. This is tearing her apart. Let's meet. You, me, your mother, and Tyler. Halfway. A cafe in Connecticut. No yelling. We'll just talk this out like adults." It was a trap. I knew it was a trap. But a small, stupid part of me, the 10-year-old boy who just wanted his bike, thought, what if? Olivia put her foot down. "Absolutely not alone," she said. "I'm coming with you. I'm not letting you walk into that ambush by yourself." The cafe was a sterile, generic place off the interstate, smelling of burnt coffee and disinfectant. My family was already there, sitting in a booth, a united front of grievance. My mother had tissues clutched in her hand, her eyes already red. My father looked grim and important. Tyler was staring at his phone, refusing to meet my gaze. The talk was exactly what I expected. A lecture. My mother cried about how I was tearing the family apart. How could I be so cold to the woman who gave birth to me? My father droned on about respect and duty and what people will think. I let them talk. I let them empty their chambers of guilt and obligation. When they were finished, I took a calm breath. Olivia's hand rested on my thigh under the table, a silent source of strength. I began to speak, my voice low and steady. I didn't raise it. I just stated facts. "You're not invited because for 30 years, you have demonstrated that my worth in this family is conditional. You're not invited because my greatest achievements were treated as footnotes, while my brother's bare minimum efforts were celebrated with parades." I looked at Tyler. His knuckles were white as he gripped his phone. "You're not invited because you've never once acted like a brother. You've acted like a rival. You stole from me, you damaged my property, and you have never, not once, shown an ounce of remorse." It was then that the first unexpected crack appeared in their armor. Tyler looked up from his phone, his face flushed with a deep, ugly red. "Oh, like you're so perfect," he spat, his voice cracking. "You always had everything. You were good at school, you had your stupid writing awards. You had Mom and Dad worried about you all the time. You even had Aunt Catherine wrapped around your finger. That stupid camera was just one more thing you had that I didn't. I hated it. I'm glad I broke it." He'd misspoken. He was referring to the $800 theft, but in his anger, he'd confessed to something else. An earlier incident, a smaller camera I'd had in high school that had mysteriously broken. The confession, the raw, undiluted jealousy, hung in the air. For a split second, I saw genuine shock on my parents' faces. They had heard it, the truth, right from the golden child's mouth. But the moment of clarity was fleeting. My father, a master of deflection, recovered first. He changed tactics, reaching for the one tool he thought was invincible, his wallet. "All right, fine," he said, pulling it out and placing it on the table with a thud. "What's this really about? Money? You think we didn't give you enough? You want a bigger, fancier wedding to impress your new rich friends? Fine, I'll pay for the whole damn thing. How much? 20, 30,000? Just send the invitations." And that was it. That was the moment I knew, with absolute certainty, there was nothing left to save. He still thought my love, my respect, my presence, was a commodity he could purchase. I stood up. Olivia stood with me. "It was never about money," I said, my voice cold and final. I looked at my father, at the confusion and rage swirling in his eyes. "And it's far too late for you to understand that." He stared at me, his face turning a dark, blotchy red as he realized his ultimate weapon was useless. "You do this, James," he snarled, his voice low and venomous. "You humiliate this family, and I swear to God, you'll regret it. I'll call every partner at your firm. I'll call my friends at the country club. I will tell every single person what an ungrateful, disloyal, rotten son you are." It was his last, most desperate shot. Not a plea for reconciliation, but a threat to my career, to the very life I had built to escape him. I looked him straight in the eye. "Go ahead," I said. "Try it." Then I took Olivia's hand, and we walked out of the cafe, leaving the ruins of my old family sitting in that cheap vinyl booth, and we didn't look back. The morning of my wedding, I woke up with a feeling I couldn't quite name. It was a potent cocktail of joy, anxiety, and a profound, bone-deep sense of finality. Today I was marrying the love of my life. Today I was formalizing the creation of my own family, one built on a foundation of trust and respect. And today, I knew the 30-year war with my old one would reach its inevitable conclusion. The venue was a stunning botanical garden in the Hudson Valley, a paradise of lush greenery and vibrant flowers, a beautiful old glass conservatory, where we would have the reception, stood gleaming in the autumn sun. It was a world away from the bitter, cramped memories of my childhood home in Boston. Olivia's family had flown in from California and Taiwan, bringing with them a warmth and uncomplicated happiness that filled every space. I was in a small, rustic cottage on the property, getting ready with Marcus, my best man. He was trying to straighten my tie, a task we'd fumbled through a dozen times before big moments in our lives. School dances, graduations, my first big job interview. "You nervous?" he asked, his eyes meeting mine in the mirror. He already knew the answer. "Not about marrying Olivia," I said honestly. "That's the easiest, most certain thing I've ever done." "The other thing, then," he said, his voice low and serious. I just nodded, my jaw tightening. We both knew what the other thing was. Before the ceremony, Olivia's father, David Chun, came to the cottage. He was a quiet, dignified man who had welcomed me into his family without reservation. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "James," he said, his voice kind, "today, you are not just gaining a wife. We are gaining a son. We are very proud to have you in our family." His simple, sincere words of acceptance were a balm to a lifetime of wounds. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. At 3, as I was pinning the white rose boutonniere to my lapel, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Julian, the head of our security team. He was dressed in a sharp, dark suit, an earpiece barely visible. His face was completely calm, a mask of unshakable professionalism. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. "What is it, Julian?" "Just a situational update, Mr. Wilson," he said, his voice a low, discreet murmur. "The subjects have arrived. Party of 3 in a dark sedan. They're at the main gate, insisting they're family and that there must be a mistake." For one sickening moment, a sliver of doubt, that old, conditioned guilt, wedged its way into my heart. What if they were here to apologize? What if this was a genuine, last-ditch effort to make things right, to see their son get married? Then, the memories played back in my mind like a high-speed horror film. The silver mountain bike that wasn't for me. The look of disgust on my father's face when he had to give me my own earnings. The smug smirk on Tyler's face after he stole my camera money. My father's venomous threat at the cafe. This wasn't an apology. This was an invasion. This was a final, desperate attempt to make my wedding day about them. I met Julian's gaze in the mirror. My voice, when it came out, was steady. Rock solid. "You have your instructions, Julian." He gave a single, sharp nod. "Understood. We'll handle it precisely as planned. You won't see them again. Congratulations on your wedding day, sir." He turned and walked away, a silent, efficient guardian of our peace. Later, Marcus and Julian would tell me exactly what happened at that gate. My parents, Robert and Linda, along with my brother Tyler, had pulled up in my father's oversized Lincoln, dressed to the nines as if they were the guests of honor. Tyler, true to form, had his phone out, already recording, no doubt planning to capture my cruel rejection for a viral video smear campaign. They approached the gate, where 2 of Julian's men stood, polite but immovable. "We're the groom's parents," my father announced, his voice booming with an authority he assumed was absolute and universal. "We're here for James Wilson's wedding." One of the security guards, a tall, imposing man, checked his list on a tablet. "I'm sorry, sir, but your names are not on the guest list." My mother immediately launched into her performance. Her face crumpled. "Oh, there must be some terrible mistake," she cried, a hand to her chest. "I'm his mother. He's my baby boy. He would never keep me out." Tyler pushed forward, his phone held high like a weapon. "He's been having some issues lately," he said in a stage whisper loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "A bit of a mental breakdown. We're just here to support him. He needs his family." This was the moment they expected to win. They expected a flustered, minimum-wage event staffer who they could intimidate or confuse. They did not expect Julian. He walked up, his presence immediately shifting the dynamic from a family squabble to a professional operation. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice calm and controlled. "I'm the head of event security. I can assure you there is no mistake. The client has provided a very specific guest list, and you are not on it." My father's face began to turn a blotchy, furious red. "The client? He's my son, not a damn client. I am not leaving until I speak to him right now." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Julian said smoothly. "This is a private event on private property, and I must ask your son," he said, looking directly at Tyler with cold, hard eyes, "to stop recording. It's against the property's policy." Tyler, for the first time, looked intimidated. He lowered his phone, his smug expression faltering. Then Julian delivered the final, devastating blow, the one we had planned for this exact scenario. "However," he said, his voice still level, "Mr. Wilson anticipated you might come. He has agreed to speak with you for 2 minutes. He asked me to arrange it in a private area, away from the other guests. If you'll please follow my colleague, he will escort you to the designated location in the east parking lot." Hope, arrogance, and triumph bloomed on their faces. They thought they'd won. They thought this was me caving under pressure. They thought they had broken through the hired help and were finally going to get the dramatic confrontation they craved, the one they could control. They followed Julian's man without a second thought, walking right into the trap. They were led to a secluded corner of the staff parking lot, hidden behind a tall hedge, far from the beautiful music and the laughter of the arriving guests. And I was there, waiting. I stood tall in my wedding suit, the white rose on my lapel a stark contrast to the grim setting. Olivia was by my side, her hand holding mine, a silent, powerful presence. She wasn't there to speak for me or to rescue me. She was there as a witness to my liberation. My father saw me and marched forward, his face a mask of incandescent rage. What the hell is the meaning of this, James? Making a spectacle? Humiliating your mother in front of these goons? I let him rant. I let my mother start to cry. I watched Tyler fidget, unsure of his role now that his plan to film a confrontation had been neutralized. When my father finally ran out of steam, sputtering to a halt, I spoke. My voice was quiet, devoid of the anger and hurt that had defined our relationship for so long. It was just calm, final. The meaning of this, I said, looking each of them in the eye one by one, is that this is a consequence. This is what happens when you spend 30 years treating a person like an afterthought. I looked at my mother, at her theatrical tears. Your presence here is not wanted because it was not earned with love, but demanded with guilt. She flinched, her crying stopping for a second in sheer shock. I turned to Tyler. He wouldn't meet my gaze. Your presence is not wanted because a brother is supposed to be your first friend, not your first rival. He supports you, he doesn't sabotage you. And finally, I looked at my father, at his proud, angry face. And your presence is not wanted because you don't get to threaten my future and then demand to be a part of it. The biggest shock of your lives isn't that I'm keeping you out. It's that you finally have to realize you have no power over me anymore. None. Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He was speechless. All his bluster, all his authority, all his paternal rage was gone, useless. All that was left was a red-faced, impotent old man standing in a parking lot. This day, I said, my voice final, is for the people who love and support me. That does not include you. Goodbye. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. I squeezed Olivia's hand, turned my back on the three of them, and walked toward the sound of the string quartet, toward my wedding, toward my future. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I was finally, irrevocably free. Walking away from them felt like shedding a massive, heavy skin I'd been wearing my entire life. With every step I took back toward the ceremony gardens, I felt lighter, as if I were walking on air. The knot in my stomach, the one that had been my constant companion for as long as I could remember, was gone. It had simply dissolved. Olivia's hand in mine was warm and steady. She didn't say anything until we reached the edge of the gardens, the sound of a string quartet now washing over us, weaving a melody of hope and happiness through the late afternoon air. The scene was idyllic, a world away from the ugly confrontation in the parking lot. "How do you feel?" she asked, her voice soft, searching my face for any sign of distress. I stopped and turned to her. I looked into her beautiful, kind eyes, and a real, genuine smile, the first one of the day that reached my own eyes, spread across my face. "I feel," I said, and my voice was clear and strong, "like I'm about to marry the love of my life." Her answering smile was radiant, a sunrise all its own. "Me too." The ceremony itself was perfect. It was everything I had never dared to dream of for myself. I stood at the altar, Marcus by my side, and I watched Olivia walk down the aisle toward me, escorted by her father. In that moment, all the ghosts of the past, all the anger and the pain and the resentment, simply vanished. They had no place here. They had no power here. There was only her, only us, only the future. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves. My voice didn't shake. I spoke of how she had taught me that love wasn't a transaction or an obligation, but a sanctuary. I told her that she was my home. When it was her turn, she spoke of my strength and resilience, and how she was honored to build a life with me. I looked out at the guests, at our friends, at Olivia's family, and I saw only faces filled with love. I saw tears in the eyes of her parents, David and Grace, who looked at me not as an in-law they had to tolerate, but as a son they had chosen. The reception was held in the magnificent glass conservatory. As dusk fell, the whole place lit up with thousands of tiny fairy lights, transforming it into an enchanted forest. The air was filled with laughter, with the clinking of glasses, with the sounds of a live band playing upbeat, joyous music. There was no drama, no simmering tensions, no one I had to avoid or perform for. There was just celebration. My old teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, now retired and with elegant silver hair, had made the journey from Boston. She gave me a fierce hug that smelled faintly of lavender. "I always knew you were gold, James," she whispered in my ear. "I'm so proud of the man you've become." Her validation, so freely given, meant more to me than 1,000 hollow compliments from my own parents ever could. Olivia's brother, Michael, gave a best man-style speech that had everyone both laughing and crying. He told embarrassing stories about Olivia as a kid, then spoke about getting to know me. "I grew up with 2 sisters," he said, raising his glass of champagne. "I love them to death, but I always wanted a brother. Someone to talk sports with, someone to have my back. And now," he said, looking directly at me across the room, "I finally have one. Welcome to the family, James. We are so lucky to have you." Family. The word felt different now. It wasn't about the accident of blood or the chains of obligation. It was about choice and love and showing up for each other and mutual, unconditional respect. The most poignant moment of the night, the one that truly signified the changing of the guard in my life, came later. It was time for the traditional parent dances. Olivia and her father shared a beautiful, touching dance that left half the room misty-eyed. Then the band leader took the microphone. "And now," he announced, "it's time for the groom and his mother to share a dance." For a beat, a hush fell over the room as people who knew my story looked at me with gentle concern. A few of our friends shot me sympathetic glances, but I just smiled, took a deep breath, and walked across the dance floor, past the head table, to a table near the front where a woman with tears in her eyes was watching me. Her expression a mixture of pride and love. I held out my hand to my Aunt Catherine. "May I have this dance?" I asked, my voice full of an emotion I could finally express freely. She took my hand, her grip firm and sure. "I would be honored, James," she said, her voice thick with her own emotion. As we stepped onto the floor, the band began to play a song we both loved, a soft, classic ballad by Van Morrison. We danced, and for those 3.5 minutes the world fell away. It wasn't a replacement dance. It wasn't a substitute for a dance I should have been having. It was a correction. It was an acknowledgement. It was a public and heartfelt tribute to the woman who had been my true north, my protector, my fiercest advocate, my real parent in every way that mattered. She was the one who drove 2 hours to celebrate a lonely teenager's college acceptance. She was the one who confronted my parents in their own living room. She was the one who wrote me a check for a new camera and invested in my future when no one else would. As the song neared its end, I leaned down and whispered in her ear, the 2 words I had needed to say for years, the 2 words she had earned 1,000 times over. "Thank you, Mom." I felt her squeeze me tight, a single sob escaping her. I felt her tears on my shoulder. They were happy tears. Mine were too. In that moment, dancing with my aunt in a room full of people who genuinely loved me, with my beautiful wife watching us with a radiant smile on her face, I wasn't just celebrating a marriage. I was celebrating the founding of a new legacy, one of my own making, one built not on the fractured, rotten foundation of my past, but on the solid ground of love, choice, and a hard-won, beautiful peace. The week after the wedding was a blissful, sun-drenched haze. Olivia and I honeymooned in Greece, a place neither of us had ever been, a place so far removed from the geography of our ordinary lives that it felt like another planet. We explored the ancient, sun-bleached ruins of the Acropolis, sailed on water so impossibly blue it didn't look real, and ate incredible food in tiny, family-run tavernas where the owner would pull up a chair and share a glass of ouzo with you. For the first time in my adult life, I felt a complete and total absence of dread. It was a sensation so foreign, it took me a few days to even identify it. There was no impending holiday to navigate, no obligatory phone call to steel myself for, no low-grade, simmering anxiety about the next confrontation. There was just peace, a quiet, expansive peace that settled deep in my bones. We spent hours talking, not about my family or the wedding drama. That chapter felt so completely closed, but about the future. About everything. We talked about the house we wanted to buy upstate with a big yard and a tire swing. We talked about the trips we wanted to take to Japan, to Italy, to the national parks out west. We argued playfully over what to name the puppy we were planning to get as soon as we got back. It was all so wonderfully, beautifully normal. I felt like I had finally surfaced after being underwater for a very long time, and I was breathing fresh, clean air for the first time. One evening, we were sitting on the balcony of our hotel room on the island of Santorini, watching the famous sunset over the caldera. The sky was a breathtaking canvas of fiery orange, soft pink, and deep purple. "You seem different," Olivia said, nudging my shoulder with hers. She was looking at me, not the sunset. "Lighter. I feel it," I admitted. "It's like there was this constant low-frequency hum of static in the back of my head my entire life. A background noise of their expectations, their drama, their disappointment. I didn't even realize how loud it was until it was finally gone." She rested her head on my shoulder. "I'm so glad. You deserve every ounce of this peace, James." Even in this paradise, though, healing showed itself not to be a straight line. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a notification, a memory from Facebook. It was one of my mother's manipulative posts from before the wedding. Seeing it, even knowing the battle was over, my stomach gave a reflexive clench. The old anxiety, a ghost in the machine. I must have tensed up because Olivia noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" I showed her the phone. "Nothing," I said, trying to brush it off. "Just a ghost." She took the phone from my hand. "No more ghosts," she said gently, and with a few taps, she blocked Robert, Linda, and Tyler on every social media platform I had. There. No more uninvited memories. It was a small act, but it was profoundly loving. She was actively helping me guard my peace. The real test came on our last day. We were back in our room in Athens, packing our bags, the scent of salt and sunscreen still clinging to our skin. I opened my laptop to check in for our flight, and my personal email account was open. And there it was, a new message. The subject line was just my name, James. The sender was Tyler Wilson. My heart gave a familiar lurch, that phantom limb of an old anxiety twitching. I froze, my cursor hovering over the message. 1,000 possibilities ran through my head. Was it an apology? A desperate plea for forgiveness? A barrage of new threats? "What is it?" Olivia asked, zipping her suitcase and noticing the change in my posture. "An email," I said, my voice flat. "From my brother. You don't have to read it," she said instantly, coming to stand behind me, her hands on my shoulders. "You can just delete it. You don't owe him a response. You don't owe him anything." I knew she was right, and 99% of me wanted to do just that, to just drag it to the trash, unread, and move on. But a small, morbidly curious part of me, the part that needed a final, definitive period at the end of this long, ugly sentence, won out. I needed to know what the last shot fired would sound like. I clicked it open. I had prepared myself for anything, but I was still shocked by the sheer, unadulterated venom and self-pity that filled the screen. It was a long, rambling wall of text, rife with typos and devoid of punctuation, as if typed out in a single breathless fit of rage. It read, "James, I hope you're happy. I hope ruining your own family and humiliating us in front of strangers was worth it. You have no idea what you've done. Mom hasn't stopped crying for a week. She just sits in her room. Dad just sits in his chair and stares at the wall. You did this to them. To us. I can't believe you'd stoop so low as to hire men to throw us out. Your own family. We came there to support you, despite everything you've done, and you treated us like criminals. You've changed James. That fancy New York job and your new wife have turned you into someone I don't even recognize. Someone cold and cruel and arrogant. You always thought you were better than us, didn't you? With your good grades and your fancy Ivy League college and your art. You looked down on all of us. You were always the golden boy in everyone else's eyes, especially Aunt Catherine's, and you still found a way to play the victim. It's pathetic. You're the one who needs therapy. You're the one who is broken. Maybe you should look in the mirror and figure out why you get pleasure from hurting the people who are supposed to mean the most to you. Don't bother writing back. We're done with you, Tyler. I read it once. Then I read it again, slowly, letting each misspelled, self-serving word sink in. The breathtaking hypocrisy, the complete lack of self-awareness, the desperate, clumsy attempt to twist reality so that he was, once again, the noble victim, and I was the villain of the story. And then, a strange thing happened. A flash of the old, familiar anger flared up inside me, hot and quick. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. It was like a wave hitting a rock and simply dissipating. It had nothing left to hold on to. It was replaced by a profound, almost serene sense of pity. Not for me, for them. For the small, dark, miserable prison they had built for themselves and would live in for the rest of their lives. I looked over at Olivia. She was watching me, her expression cautious, ready to be my anchor through whatever emotional fallout came next. I turned the laptop so she could read it. She read it quickly, her eyes scanning the lines, a small, sad frown forming on her face. When she finished, she looked up at me. "Wow," she said softly. "He really, truly doesn't get it, does he?" "No," I said, and I was surprised to find I was smiling a little. "He never will." And that was the final piece of the puzzle, the last truth I needed to accept. They were never going to change. They were never going to understand. They would go to their graves believing their own twisted version of this story. And it didn't matter. My happiness was not, and had never truly been, contingent on their apology or their understanding. It was mine. I had forged it in fire. I had earned it. I looked at Olivia, at her loving, worried face, and I felt a surge of overwhelming love and gratitude for her. For this life, for this peace. The past was finally just the past. I moved the cursor over to the little trash can icon next to Tyler's email. I clicked it. A little box popped up. "The conversation has been moved to the trash." Then I navigated to the trash folder, a place where things go to be forgotten. I selected the email. I clicked delete forever. Another box appeared. "Are you sure you want to permanently delete this conversation?" I took a deep breath and clicked OK. And just like that, it was gone. I closed the laptop, the soft click echoing in the quiet room. The final door to my past had been slammed shut. Not by them, by me. I turned to my beautiful wife, the embodiment of my entire future. "I'm starving," I said, "and I'm thinking we need to find the best souvlaki in Athens before we head to the airport." Her face broke into a wide, beautiful grin. "Now you're talking," she said. "Let's go." It's been 6 months since the wedding. Life has settled into a beautiful, peaceful rhythm that I no longer take for granted. We bought that house upstate. It has a big yard, and I spent a whole Saturday hanging a tire swing from an old oak tree for our future kids. We also adopted that puppy, a goofy, clumsy golden retriever named Gus who now rules our lives and covers our floors in a fine layer of fur. The other night, after Olivia had gone to bed, I was in my home office, looking through our wedding photos for a frame I wanted to order. The professional ones had come in a while back, but I hadn't really sat down and gone through all of them. I was clicking through image after image of pure, unadulterated joy. There was a photo of Olivia roaring with laughter during her brother's hilarious speech. There was a candid shot of Marcus and me, arms slung around each other's shoulders, making stupid faces at the camera, looking like the two awkward kids we'd always been. I paused on a photo of me talking with Mrs. Reynolds. She's holding my hand, her expression full of warmth and pride. Looking at it, I realized that single moment of validation from her held more weight and meaning than 30 years of my own parents' strained, obligatory praise. Then I came to the one of me dancing with my Aunt Catherine. My eyes are closed, and there's a smile on my face that is so completely at peace, I barely recognize the man in the picture. It's the smile of a man who is not just happy, but unburdened. That photo didn't just capture a moment. It captured a healing. It erased the memory of the lonely boy at the steakhouse, the teenager driving alone to his own award ceremony. Looking at those photos, at the faces of my real family, I realized something profound. For years, I thought of setting boundaries with my parents and brother as a destructive act. An act of cutting off, of ending something, a failure. I carried so much guilt about it. But I was wrong. It wasn't an amputation. It was a surgery. It was a painful, difficult, but necessary procedure to remove a toxic, cancerous growth that was threatening to kill the rest of my soul. You don't perform that surgery because you hate the part of you that's sick. You do it because you love the rest of you enough to want it to live. You do it for the chance to be healthy and whole. I don't hate my parents or my brother. I've realized I don't have the energy for that anymore. It's like trying to be angry at the weather. It is what it is. I just accept them. I accept that they are who they are, and that who they are is simply not compatible with the life of peace, respect, and love that I have chosen to build. My victory wasn't in changing them. It was in finally, fully accepting that I couldn't, and having the courage to build my own happiness anyway. I haven't heard from them since that final, pathetic email. Not a word. My father never made good on his threat to ruin my career. Maybe he knew it was an empty threat. Maybe, in the end, he was just a coward. It doesn't matter anymore. They are ghosts from another life. My life, the real one, is here, in this quiet house, with my incredible wife sleeping upstairs, our dog snoring at my feet, and a future that feels bright and open. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was long, but I appreciate you sticking with me. I hope it touched you in some way, and maybe even gave you a bit of strength if you're facing your own battles. It's a hard, painful thing to stand up for your own peace. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice like this in your own family to protect your own happiness? Let me know your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. It really does help the channel. Take care of yourselves out there.